The roast sat in the middle of the table, still steaming, but nobody was really eating. Marissa kept pretending to fix her napkin, Julian kept cutting at his steak like it had personally wronged him, and I just sat there, staring at the chipped edge of my plate. 40 years of sweat and busted knuckles built this house, this ranch, this table, and now it felt like I was just a guest in it. Julian cleared his throat, that smug little sound he does when he's about to drop something stupid. "So, Pops," he said, dragging the word out like it was gum on his shoe, "me and Marissa have been talking. We think it's time to make some changes around here." I looked up slow. "Changes?" He smirked. "Yeah. Modernize the place. Bring in new investors, new tech. You know, move out of the Stone Age. No offense." "None taken," I said, though my jaw went tight. "But this land doesn't need investors. It needs work. It needs people who give a damn." Marissa's voice was soft, too soft. "Daddy, we're just trying to help. You've done so much, but maybe it's time you rest." That word, rest, hit me like a slap. Rest was what you said to a man you were done listening to. I looked around that table, the same one I built with my own hands, the one where Marissa learned her times tables, the one where Clarice and I fought and made up over biscuits and coffee. Now it was full of people who talked about me like I was a cracked window that needed replacing. Julian leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, chewing slow. "Look, as long as we're here, you have no right to speak, old man. We got this now." The whole room went dead quiet. You could hear the clock ticking on the wall, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Marissa didn't say a word. She just stared down at her plate, like if she stayed still enough, maybe I'd disappear. I stood up, slow, steady. My chair scraped the wood like a growl. "You sure about that?" I asked. Julian gave a little shrug, all arrogance and aftershave. "Positive." I wanted to shout, to flip the table, to remind him who poured the foundation of this house and broke his back keeping it running through droughts, storms, and debts. But instead, I swallowed the fire. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not loud, not clean, just a quiet break somewhere deep. I walked out the back door without another word. The sky was already bruising purple, thunder rolling in from the west. I stood under the porch light, listening to the rain start to fall. Every drop sounded like another year washing off me. I thought of Clarice, how she used to laugh when the rain hit the tin roof, how she'd tell me, "Elijah, storms don't take things from you. They just show what's built strong enough to stay." I didn't feel strong then. I felt hollow. Inside, I could still hear Julian's voice through the walls, low and muffled, talking about paperwork and plans. My name, my legacy, rolling off his tongue like a bad joke. That night, I drove into town with my hands trembling on the wheel. The rain came down harder, wipers slapping in rhythm. I pulled up to the old First County Bank, the same one I'd trusted for decades. The guard recognized me, nodded politely. I smiled back, though my teeth felt made of glass. Inside, I told the clerk I wanted to withdraw everything, every last cent. She hesitated, typing, tapping. "All of it, Mr. Rollins? You sure?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm sure." The printer hummed. The storm outside rattled the windows. When she handed me the envelope, it felt heavier than it should have, like it held not just money, but years of work, pride, and heartbreak all folded together. I stepped outside, rain hitting my hat brim, and looked up at the sky. Lightning flashed over the road back to Ironwood Ranch. I could almost hear Clarice again, whispering through the thunder, "Walk away before they take more." So I did. The truck's headlights cut through the downpour as I pulled onto the empty road. Behind me, the ranch lights faded into a blur. Ahead, nothing but dark and the promise of starting over, or burning it all down. Either way, tomorrow would not find me there. The wipers kept squeaking back and forth, fighting the rain like they were tired of trying. The road ahead was nothing but fog and slick asphalt, and my headlights bounced off the puddles like tiny mirrors, each one flashing pieces of a life that didn't fit together anymore. I had the envelope of cash riding shotgun, sealed tight, damp around the edges. My whole life's work, sitting there like hush money from the devil. Clarice would have hated this weather. She used to call nights like this Ghost weather. Said the rain made the past knock on your windows. She was right. I swear I could almost hear her humming along with the radio, off-key and happy. Back then, that woman could calm a tornado just by holding my hand. Now, she was nothing but a voice in the rearview mirror. I parked across from the diner where we had our first date. Back when the ranch was just a rough idea and a stretch of stubborn dirt. I remembered her boots hitting the porch, the smell of wet hay, her laugh echoing off the barn walls. Everything about that ranch was us. And now those two snakes were tearing it apart like vultures fighting over bones. I sat there a long minute, listening to the rain beat down. My fingers itched to light a cigarette, though I'd quit years ago. Old habits die hard when your heart feels cracked open. I pulled out the deed copy Clarice and I signed the year she passed, her handwriting shaky but proud beside mine. Then I thought about Julian's face at dinner, smug as sin, saying I had no right to speak. That one sentence kept looping in my head like a bad country song. The rain slowed just enough for me to pull back onto the road. The bank's yellow sign flickered through the mist, the same place that held every dollar I'd saved since I was 18. I parked under the awning, took a deep breath, and walked in. The air inside smelled like coffee and carpet cleaner, too clean for the kind of dirt I was dragging in. The bank manager, Todd, gave me a polite smile. "Evenin', Mr. Rollins. Back again, huh?" "Yeah," I said, setting the envelope on the counter. "Need to check on some property records. Ironwood Ranch." He frowned, tapping at the keyboard. "Sure thing. Lemme pull it up. That's odd." "What's odd?" My voice came out rough, like gravel. He squinted at the screen, then at me. "Says here you're not the listed owner anymore. Property was transferred 3 weeks ago." "Transferred?" I repeated, blinking. "To who?" "Julian and Marissa Hayes." He said their names like he didn't realize he'd just dropped a live grenade. For a second, I thought maybe he'd mixed up the files. Then he turned the monitor so I could see it myself. There it was, my name, my damn signature, signed neat and proper beneath the transfer stamp. Only thing was, I hadn't signed a damn thing. I could feel the heat rise up my neck, that kind that comes right before something ugly. "Todd," I said slowly, "you ever seen me come in here with them? Ever seen me sign anything with those two?" He swallowed. "Can't say that I have, Mr. Rollins." My hand shook as I picked up the fake deed. Clarice's name was gone. Just mine, forged clean. The rain outside started again, tapping the windows like it was keeping time with my pulse. "Guess I'll need to make some calls," I muttered. Todd tried to say something, but I was already out the door. The wind hit me hard, cold and heavy, like the truth itself. I sat in the truck a while, the deed on my lap, watching the raindrops chase each other down the glass. My reflection stared back. Older, smaller, meaner. Somewhere deep down, a fire started to burn slow and steady. I turned the key and whispered, "You took my name off my land. Now I'm taking it back." The thunder rolled in like a promise. I parked outside the notary's office just as the sun started crawling up over Main Street. The rain from last night had left everything slick and shining, like the whole damn town had been scrubbed clean, except me. I sat there in the truck, the fake deed on the seat beside me, staring at my own name like it was some stranger's. Elijah J. Rollins. Same loops, same slant, same little hitch in the R. It looked too perfect. Almost like whoever did it had practiced 100 times till it felt natural. My stomach turned. I'd signed a lot of papers in my life. Loans, land, marriage, death certificates. But never one that cut me clean out of my own bloodline. When I finally stepped out, the air smelled like damp paper and old coffee. Inside, the notary office was dead quiet, just the hum of a ceiling fan and the squeak of rubber saws. Dean Harper, the clerk I'd known since he was knee-high, looked up and grinned. "Mr. Rollins. Been a while. What brings you by this early?" I laid the deed on the counter. "Need you to tell me if you stamped this." He blinked, then reached for his glasses. The second he saw it, his smile dropped clean off. "Jesus, where'd you get this?" "Bank," I said. "They said it was filed right here." Dean flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing deeper with every turn. He leaned closer, then gave a slow whistle. That's my notary seal, all right. But this ain't your signature day. You were laid up at Baylor, right? That heart scare. Yeah, I said, voice tight. Couldn't even hold a damn pen. Dean rubbed the back of his neck. Julian brought this in. Said you'd signed earlier and just needed it notarized. Had the docs, the IDs, everything looked proper. Guess I didn't think twice. I felt something inside me go real still, like the moment before a lightning strike. You're telling me that boy forged my name and you stamped it? Dean looked sick. Elijah, I swear, I didn't know. He had every detail. Even your medical records. It looked legit. I didn't answer. Just picked up the paper again. The ink shimmered faintly under the office lights, black and clean and final. My signature, but not my soul. Outside, the morning had turned bright and mean. I stood by the truck, holding that deed like it was a loaded gun. Julian hadn't just crossed a line, he'd buried it 6 feet deep. I thought about calling the sheriff, but what would that do? Cops don't chase family lies, they file 'em away till the hurt fades. No, this was personal. And personal didn't need a badge. I climbed back into the truck, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Across the street, the courthouse clock ticked like a countdown. I'd have to talk to Harrison Reed, the old lawyer who'd handled my wife's will. He'd know what to do, or at least how to hurt them where it counted. The engine coughed to life, growling low. I tossed the fake deed on the dash and muttered, "You wanted the ranch, Julian? Fine. Let's see if you can keep it." By the time I turned down the dirt road to the ranch, the sun was dipping low, spilling that burnt orange light that makes everything look like it's on fire. Dust kicked up behind the truck, swirling like smoke. My land. My name on every fence post, every damn rock. And yet, somehow, it didn't belong to me anymore. The front porch light was on. I never left it on. Clarice used to say electricity wasn't free, even for ghosts. But Julian wasn't raised on sense. He was raised on showing off. I stepped out, boots crunching gravel, the air thick with the smell of rain-soaked dirt and something sour. Paint thinner maybe. Renovation. They were already changing things. When I pushed open the door, the house hit me with a chill. They'd moved the old family photos off the wall. The one of Clarice and me under the oak was gone, replaced by some fake art print of a mountain. Cold. Perfect. Lifeless. Marissa was in the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel, pretending not to see me. She looked smaller somehow, like guilt had shaved a few inches off her. Julian leaned against the counter, drink in hand, that smug grin plastered across his face like always. "Well, look who's back," he said, voice dripping honey and poison. "Didn't think you'd swing by without Callan first." I didn't answer. Just walked past him, slow, eyes sweeping over what used to be my home. New rugs. New curtains. Even the smell was different, like money trying to hide rot. Julian chuckled. "You didn't have to come all this way just to check up, old man. We're talking good care of things. You should be restin', not prowlin' around like some stray dog." That word again, rest. They loved throwing it around like it was mercy. Like they hadn't stolen everything I built and buried me alive. Marissa finally spoke, voice small and shaky. "Daddy, please don't start." I turned to her. For a split second, I almost saw the little girl who used to follow me through the fields, begging to ride the tractor. But that girl was gone, buried under fear and convenience. "I ain't startin'," I said quietly. "You two already did." Julian laughed, short and sharp. "You think we owe you something? You've had your run. Time to let the next generation handle things." I stepped closer, till the space between us was nothing but breath and tension. "Handle things," I said. "You don't even know what this land is. It's not just dirt and numbers, it's blood, sweat, and ghosts you can't outbuy." He smirked, swirling his glass. "Whatever helps you sleep, Pops." I stared at him for a long moment, the kind of stare that could strip paint. Then I turned away, walking down the hallway one last time. My boots echoed off the hardwood, each step heavier than the last. Every photo gone. Every trace of Clarice erased. The house didn't hum anymore, it just sat there, hollow as a coffin. I stopped by the back door, listening to the wind rattle the windows. My voice came out low, meant only for the walls. Enjoy the quiet while it lasts. Then I walked out without another glance. The air outside was cool, the sky deepening to bruised blue. As I stepped off the porch, I made a promise, not out loud, not even in words, but deep enough the earth itself could hear it. One day, I'd give them back this silence. Only colder. Only heavier. Harrison Reed's law office sat on the corner of Main and Ash, tucked between an old pawn shop and a barber that still charged $8 a cut. The paint was peeling off the sign, and the blinds hadn't been straight since Nixon, but the man inside? Still sharp as a tack, even in retirement. I sat there in the truck for a minute, watching the morning sun bounce off the dusty windows. The forged deed lay on the dashboard, looking innocent enough to fool God himself. I grabbed it, took a breath, and headed inside. The little bell above the door jingled, same as it had 20 years ago when Clarice and I came in to sign our will. Back then, Harrison had hair and I had hope. Now he was balding, and I was damn near hollow. "Elijah Rollins," he said, looking up from a stack of papers. His voice still had that gravel and whiskey tone that made juries sit up straight. "Been a long while, son." "Yeah," I said, setting the deed on his desk. "Too long. Got something ugly I need your eyes on." He leaned forward, slipping on his glasses. "Ugly, huh? I've seen a lot of ugly in my day. Lemme take a peek." He scanned the document line by line, his eyes narrowing. "This your signature?" "Looks like it," I muttered. "But I sure as hell didn't sign it." Harrison let out a slow whistle. "Perfect match. Whoever did this had practice. Damn fine forgery." "Julian Hayes," I said. "Marissa's husband. Brought it to the notary while I was laid up in the hospital." He leaned back in his chair, lips pressed tight. "That's premeditated theft, Elijah. Fraud, forgery, and a few other felonies sprinkled on top." "I figured as much." He shuffled through another folder, then grabbed his laptop. "You still got the bank info tied to the ranch account?" I nodded and slid him a second envelope. "Everything's there. Statements, wire slips, even a few checks with their handwriting." He clicked and scrolled, his brow tightening. "Well, I'll be damned. They didn't just steal your land. They drained your savings, too. Looks like Julian moved a chunk of your retirement into a shell company. Smart little bastard." My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. "You can fix this, right?" He looked up, his eyes soft but serious. "Maybe. But it'll take time. The courts move slow when the crime's got family tied to it. You want justice, you're gonna have to play it patient." I nodded, though the word tasted bitter. Harrison studied me a moment longer, then leaned forward. "But I'll tell you something, Elijah. Justice takes patience, and vengeance does too. Don't rush either one. If you go kicking doors now, you'll lose more than land. You'll lose your proof." I sat there, quiet, watching dust float through the sunlight between us. He wasn't wrong. But patience had never been my strong suit, not when betrayal sat breathing down my neck. Finally, I stood up, tucking the deed back into the envelope. "Appreciate it, Harry. Keep digging." "I'll stay quiet for now." He smirked. "You always were a stubborn son of a gun. Just make sure that silence of yours don't get too loud." As I stepped outside, the air hit me like a warning. Hot, still, and heavy with dust. I climbed back into my truck, the seat creaking under me. Across the street, a couple of kids rode by on bikes, laughing like the world never lied. I gripped the steering wheel, staring down the long stretch of road back toward the ranch. "Patience," he said. "Yeah, I could do that. But not forever." The nights out at Ironwood had always been quiet. Coyotes yipping far off, wind cutting through the grass, barn doors creaking like they had secrets to tell. But ever since Julian and Marissa started tearing the place apart, that quiet turned into something else. It wasn't peace anymore. It was warning. They brought in contractors from town, city boys who didn't know the land, didn't care about it either. They stomped around in brand new boots, talked loud, and played country music off their phones like that made them country. By day they worked on tearing down the old barn. By night they drank cheap beer on my porch. My porch. But come midnight, the laughter always stopped. That's when I'd roll up in my truck, lights off, engine quiet. I parked at the far edge by the west fence line and walked the perimeter like I used to. Boots sinking in the mud, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. I'd check the locks on the shed, make sure the cattle gate was still chained, make sure they hadn't ruined what little was left of my work. From the distance, the new floodlights they'd installed lit the ranch up like a prison yard. I watched their shadows moving through the windows, Julian's big swaggering shape pacing the kitchen, Marissa's silhouette standing still, always by the window, like she could feel me out there. Maybe she could. Word started spreading around town that the ranch was haunted. Couple of ranch hands quit after hearing footsteps in the stables, tools going missing, the old wind chime outside ringing when there wasn't any breeze. One guy swore he saw someone standing by the corral fence at 2 in the morning. Gray coat, hat pulled low, face hidden. Said when he called out, the figure just vanished. That was me, of course. But I let the rumors run. They kept people nervous, and that kept them careful. One night, the sheriff's cruiser rolled up the dirt road. I was crouched near the old water trough, checking the fence line. The headlights flashed across the field, and I ducked low. Sheriff Dale stepped out, belly first, flashlight swinging lazy. "Julian," he hollered toward the porch. "Y'all been callin' about ghosts again? You know I got better things to do than chase campfire stories." Julian came out, voice tight. "Someone's messin' with us, Dale." Gates left open, footprints in the mud, weird noises in the barn. The sheriff sighed, adjusted his belt. "Ain't no ghosts. Maybe raccoons. Maybe guilt." He chuckled, then turned back toward his cruiser. "Either way, I'd stop looking over your shoulder so much. The land don't like fear." Julian didn't laugh. I stayed still till the taillights faded. Then I straightened up, brushing dirt from my knees. The moon hung low, silver and mean, casting long shadows across the pasture. The ranch didn't look like home anymore. It looked like a memory somebody tried to repaint. As I walked back to the truck, I spotted something nailed to the fence post. A new sign, fresh paint still dripping. Asterisk private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Asterisk. I smirked. Prosecuted, huh? Guess I better call my lawyer. Sliding into the truck, I took one last look at the house. Marissa was in the upstairs window again, curtain half drawn, hand pressed against the glass. She wasn't looking out anymore. She was looking in, scared of what she'd let inside her own walls. The engine purred to life, low and steady. The ranch lights shrank in the mirror, swallowed by darkness. The next morning, I found Harrison Reed sittin' behind his desk with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. He slid a stack of papers across the table like a poker dealer with a royal flush. "Found your smoking gun," he said. The paperwork was thick, all bank logos and fine print. Right there in black and white. Julian had used Ironwood Ranch as collateral for a 6-figure loan. In my name. He'd pulled it off right after the forged deed cleared, before the ink was even dry. Smart move for a coward. "Son of a bitch," I muttered. Reed leaned back, folding his arms. "Loans tied up in a fake LLC registered under his name and yours. He's been moving funds in and out like a shell game. But here's the thing, he's sloppy. Missed some filing details, left a few digital trails." I raised an eyebrow. "You can trace it?" He smirked. "Already did. The payments go through a middle bank in Dallas. With your authorization, well, the real one, we can reroute him. Quietly. He'll think the system's just glitching." For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to satisfaction. Cold, hard, patient satisfaction. "How long till he notices?" "Oh," Reed said, lighting a cigar. "A couple of months, maybe less. But by then, he'll be knee-deep in collection calls and overdraft notices. Man like that. Pride's his biggest investment. Let's watch it crash. I grinned. Guess karma takes wire transfers now. That night, I sat in my truck outside the ranch, watching the glow from the kitchen window. Julian and Marissa were arguing, voices sharp enough to cut through glass. She slammed a cabinet. He threw something across the counter. Even from out here, I could see it. Panic, confusion, fear. The same cocktail they'd served me at that dinner table. Good. A few days later, Reed called. Julian tried making a payment, he said, chuckling. Bounced. Twice. Bank flagged him for review. They'll freeze his account if he doesn't fix it soon. I laughed under my breath, the sound low and rusty. Let him sweat. He did. Over the next week, mail piled up on their porch. Bank statements, late notices, red stamps screaming final warning. I passed by in the evenings just to see it. Every envelope another little ghost whisperin', "You shouldn't have messed with blood." Marissa stopped going into town. Folks said she looked pale, jittery. Julian, though, he still strutted around like he could muscle through it. But I could tell the swagger was cracked. His shoulders hunched lower every day, his smile stretched thinner. The land had started turning on him too, weather acting mean, fences breaking, animals restless. Ironwood never did like strangers in charge. I didn't touch a thing. Didn't need to. The system and his own arrogance were doing the heavy lifting for me. By the time the second month rolled around, Reed called again. Loans due. He's out of tricks. Good, I said. Now the silence can start talking back. Her headlights hit the side of my cabin like lightning, cutting through the dark woods. I didn't move. Just sat in the old chair by the window, the one that groaned every time I leaned forward. I'd known she'd come sooner or later. The only surprise was how long it took. The door creaked open before I could even say a word. Marissa stepped in, soaked to the bone, eyes red and wild like she'd been driving through hell itself. Her fancy coat was half slipped off her shoulders, mud caked to her shoes. "Daddy," she said, voice breaking. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." I didn't answer. Just stared at her, that same girl who used to bring me lemonade while I fixed fences. Now she looked like a ghost made of guilt and bad decisions. She wiped her face with shaky hands. "He's sellin' it, Daddy. The whole ranch. Every acre. He already met with some realtor from Houston. He's been seein' someone else too." Her words came out in gasps, like each one was cutting her throat on the way out. "I found the messages," she said. "Plans to sell the land, take the money, and leave." He told her he'd finally be free of the old man and his daughter's baggage. She laughed, a broken little sound that didn't belong in this world. "Guess I'm baggage now." The wind howled through the cracks in the walls, and for a second I could have sworn I heard Clarice's voice in it, soft, steady, forgiving. But forgiveness wasn't mine to give anymore. Not tonight. Marissa sank down on the floor, right by the hearth. Her hands were trembling so bad she dropped her purse, and papers spilled out. Bank letters, loan notices, proof of everything Reed and I already knew. "I thought we were buildin' something," she whispered. "I thought he loved me." I took a long breath, slow and quiet. She looked up at me, waiting for something. Comfort, maybe, or absolution. I had neither left in me. "Say something, Daddy. Please." My throat tightened, but no words came. I wanted to tell her she'd dug this hole herself. That she'd chosen greed over blood, lies over truth. But when I looked at her, my little girl, broken and lost, I saw enough punishment already. So I just stood there, watching the tears streak through the dirt on her face. The silence between us was thick, heavier than grief, heavier than hate. After a long minute, she pushed herself up, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "You were right," she said. "About him. About everything." I finally looked her dead in the eye, just once, and nodded. No anger. No forgiveness. Just truth. She sniffed hard, grabbed her purse, and turned toward the door. "I'll fix it," she muttered, like a promise she knew she couldn't keep. When her car lights disappeared down the road, I let out a breath I'd been holding for years. The cabin felt emptier than ever, but something inside me had shifted. Quietly, finally. Months had slipped by like dust in the wind, slow and quiet. Elijah found himself rolling back to that old ranch, the one left empty, like a ghost town stuck in time. The place was silent, except for the wind whistling through the fields, carrying with it memories that hung thick in the air. It wasn't just any breeze, it felt like the past itself was breathing around him, stirring up ghosts nobody else could see. He stood there for a minute, just taking it all in. The cracked wood fences, the overgrown grass pushing up through the dirt, the faded sun set low like it was bowing out of respect. This land had stories, secrets buried deep, and now it was his alone. A letter showed up, sliding through the door like a whisper. Marissa's handwriting was sharp, clean, no flowery words, no guilt or sorries, just one thing, a peace treaty, silent but loud. She didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't beg for a second chance. Just wanted him to call a truce, to lay down the past. Elijah didn't even crack it open. Hell no. He took that piece of paper straight to the fire pit out back. With a flick of his wrist, he tossed it in, watching the flames lick it up, tanning it to ash before it could ever touch his skin. Sometimes, the quietest moves speak the loudest. He muttered under his breath, voice rough like gravel. As long as I'm here, you got no say. No right to speak. Those words weren't just for Marissa, they were for everyone who thought they could step back into his life, rewrite the rules. This was his turf now. His silence. The sky stretched wide, painted in shades of burnt orange and purple, the kind that made you feel small but steady all at once. Elijah felt that weight settle on him, the kind that comes when the noise dies down, and all that's left is you, your breath, and the truth you carry. No more fights. No more running from ghosts or ghosts running from him. Just the land, the wind, and a calm that felt like justice done right. Poetic, in its own rough way. He walked slow around the property, touching the weathered wood here, the dry earth there. Every step was a stitch in the fabric of closure, painful but necessary. Like a wound finally scabbed in over after too long. The ranch wasn't just dirt and fences no more. It was a tombstone and a promise. A last rest for the past and a quiet opening for whatever came next. Elijah wasn't just standing on land. He was standing on the edge of his own peace. No cheers, no tears. Just the hum of solitude and the promise that this silence, it belonged to him now. And with it, a slow kind of freedom. As the last light dipped below the horizon, Elijah took a deep breath and felt the weight ease off his shoulders. The trial was over. The blood spilled. The lies told. Now, it was time for the quiet. And in that quiet, he finally found himself.